What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Indiana Jones's mid-season debate room. I'm calling it mid-season to call it somehow because we have this summer break, even though half of the season is already gone. So, what should we expect from the rest of the season right now, right? We do have Verstappen and Red Bull cruising to the championship. And what can we expect from the other teams, all the drivers and stuff from here on until the end of the season, till the end of the year, until the beginning of next season? Let's start checking what we have left. We do have, as you can see, round 13, even though we didn't race in Imola. So 12 races gone, and we have 10 races left. We will start in Zandvoort, which is a very not interesting racetrack. You cannot overtake, only in 1 point, if possible. Narrow pit lane, narrowed racetrack, and not overtaking chances. It's very small racetrack, by the way. Kind of obsolete for F1, but still, Max Verstappen is there, so they have to keep it going. We have Monza, which is one of the highest speed recording racetracks in the calendar. We will see what's going to happen with Las Vegas about that. But anyway, every single racetrack you should be expecting the Red Bull to win, right? Singapore, where you have a safety car chances, so that could spice up a little bit the race. I don't think it will be raining like last year, so nothing happening there. You do have Suzuka, which is kind of like Zandvoort. It's narrow, and you do not have a lot of overtaking chances, perhaps a little bit here or at the end of the straight line. However, you do have a right corner on a braking thing at the end of the straight line, so overtaking might not be so easy either. We do have Losail, where you do have only one overtaking point, which is at the end of the straight. All the rest of the racetrack is it's kind of a high-speed corner after high-speed corner. It's not narrow, but you do not have enough space to try to throw the car to the guy in front, unless you have a clearly superior pace, right? You do have Austin, by the way. Qatar and Austin are the remaining two sprint races, so even though they do not bring anything onto the table for the F1, right? I mean, the fastest car is gonna win anyhow. Unless you had something happening in the qualifying. There's no pit stop strategies. Usually it's only on one tire, so nothing to expect from the sprint races, either in Losail, either in Austin. So yeah, Austin could be more interesting than Losail, as you perhaps have seen in the past years, where stuff could happen, right? You could have a surprise. I don't think so. Like last year, for example, Hamilton fighting with Verstappen. I don't think you will see that, but we did see some surprise winners in this racetrack in past years, so this could be something interesting. Another Grand Prix where you might not see anything happening is the Mexican Grand Prix, right? You do have the overtaking chance at the end of the straight, even though usually you do not see so much. At the end of the second straight, two DRS zones, one after the other one, is clearly giving the advantage to the car behind you twice, because you only have one detection point. So if you do have the DRS here, you do have the DRS here as well. So if you overtake, then you have the advantage to try to pull away. Usually not much happens in Mexico, so not much expectations from Mexico. Same like Brazil, unless it's raining. Similar like the one in Mexico, you do have two DRS zones, one after the other one, with a chicane in the middle. Can get something interesting, but overtaking chances are very slim. Either you overtake at the end of the straight or the second straight, or you have to wait until the next lap. So not much interesting. And this is the main expectation for this is, right? Las Vegas. Looks like it's going to be something similar to a street Monza, where you will have a very low wing setup for the car. Because as you can see, there is not high-speed corners. You don't need downforce, right? You have here something, like if you come by with speed here, you have to brake, then you have to brake, then you have to nothing, you have to brake again, then you have to brake again. The pit lane is here. Looks like the qualifying is going to be very important, because the race to the sprint to the first corner is going to be very short. something like Spa, for example, qualifying is important. So we will see how it's gonna be like, but it looks like it's gonna be a high-speed racetrack. You might have 1 DRS zone, 2 DRS zones, and 3 DRS zones. So you might see some overtakings, but it's a street racetrack, so we will see about that. And then one of the most boring Grand Prix in the whole calendar, which is the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Not much happens there usually. You do not have, even though you have 1 DRS and 2 DRS zones, it doesn't help you a lot. We already saw this, for example, with Alonso in Ferrari, right? He was not able to overtake Petrov, who had no DRS. So DRS in this racetrack doesn't help so much, and this is a problem for this racetrack. I don't know how they could try to manage to make it better when you don't have anything else to do with this racetrack, right? So we will see what's going to happen. So, point number 1 to discuss what's going to happen with the drivers, right? This is the standings for the drivers. You can see Verstappen has 314 points. It's cruising to the championship and has, I think it's 125 points ahead of Perez. And then you have Alonso in 3rd position, which I highly doubt he's going to finish there. Hamilton, Leclerc, Russell, Sainz, Norris, and so on, right? Only have 3 drivers that didn't score points so far. Nick De Vries cannot score points anymore. But anyway, we do have Sargent and we do have Ricciardo. We will see if Ricciardo can score points at all with the AlphaTauri. So yeah, so again, question number 1, when can Max Verstappen be the world champion, right? It has a clearing of 125 points with Perez. We do have 10 races left and 2 sprint races, which means we have 250 points, 25 points for every main race on Sunday, and then 8 points for every sprint race on Saturday. So 250 plus 16 plus 10, it's 276 points with 10 races to go. Well, 12 if you count with the sprint races, right? So when can they win the championship? Well, if you consider that Red Bull is going to be doing 1-2s from here until the end of the season, because they have the best car, right? And they already focused in the next year's car, but I'm gonna guess that the rest of the teams are also focusing on next year's car, even though the regulations and the standards are kind of like a continuation of this year. There's no big changes, just slim stuff. So yeah. So when can he be? Well, in Lausanne. In Qatar, in the Qatar race, he could be the world champion already if they do 1-2s and Verstappen wins every single race, without counting the points for the fastest lap. But we know Verstappen is going to do the fastest lap, right? So how about the other ones? Well, we do have Sergio Perez, which is in 2nd position, has a clearing of 40 points with Fernando Alonso, and then Hamilton is 1 point behind Fernando Alonso, right? And then you have Leclerc kind of behind. So what is this going to look like? Well, first, I'm going to say that Sergio Perez is going to finish 2nd. He has the fastest car, and even if he does one of his screw-ups in qualifying, in the race, he can recover with strategy and pure performance of the car, right? So he should be finishing 2nd, no problems there. Now, who's going to be 3rd? Aston Martin started the season as the 2nd best car, but now has been overtaken by Mercedes, by Ferrari, and by McLaren. So they are number 5 right now, just in front of Alpine. So Fernando Alonso, I'm going to guess, unless he's extremely lucky, which sometimes he is really lucky, should be losing the 3rd position of the championship, and perhaps also the 4th. We will see about that. Who could be finishing the 3rd then? Well, Hamilton is the main contender there. Mercedes is the 2nd or the 3rd car right now, fighting with the McLaren. And we can see that from here until the end of the season, if not, like the cars are not upgraded anymore, things are going to more or less remain the same. We did see that Mercedes finished the year quite strong last year, and this is what you should be expecting from the Mercedes until the end of the year. So I'm going to expect that Hamilton is going to finish 3rd, and then perhaps Lando Norris could be coming up in points to try to snatch something. I don't know if... Sorry, there you go. Where is Lando Norris? Lando Norris is 8th right now with 69 points. We do have 10 races and 2 sprint races left, which means he needs to score at least 100 points to try to catch all these people, and of course more than 100 points to try to overtake all these people. If they are finishing in the podium as they have been doing since the Austrian Grand Prix, Perhaps Lando Norris could be a contender for that third position in the championship, but the gap, as you can see, 69 points, 148 points. It's almost 100 points, so I don't think so. Looks like McLaren's awakening has been a little bit too late. However, this is very good news for McLaren next year. So it looks like Hamilton is going to be third, probably Fernando Alonso is going to be fourth. Alonso is here, sorry. And we will see if Leclerc can maintain there, if George Russell can snatch that position off him. What about the teams? Well, like Max Verstappen in the drivers, we do have Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship, cruising to the, should be 4, 5, 6 titles, 6 Constructors' titles, right? 4 with Vettel, and then 2 with Verstappen and Perez in the last 2 years. Well, this should be the 6th one, right? But anyway, we can see Mercedes, like I said, is the fourth to be considered right now. We do have Aston Martin, we have Ferrari, and we have McLaren, Mercedes. And then you have a gap to Alpine, which, despite their own bit of bad luck during the season, I don't think they have anything else to give. Seeing how they have some kind of internal structuring process going on and stuff, we will see how this is going to be handled, by the way. So what should we expect? When can Red Bull be the champion? Well, similar like it's going to happen with Max Verstappen. They do have a clear of 256 points with Mercedes, and there's 10 races and 2 sprint races left, like I said. So 25 points for the first, 18 points for the second. This is 43 points in the main races, and then 8 plus 7 for the sprint races. If they do 1 choose, and from here until the end of the season, there will be 15 points, 2 sprint races, 30 points, right? So as you can see here, you have 430 plus 30 plus 10. It's 470 points left to be the world champion. So what's going to happen? Well, probably Red Bull is going to be doing 1 choose for most of the races left. If you consider that Mercedes is 3 and 4 in all those races, Red Bull will be world champion in 3 races: Zandvoort, Monza, Singapore. After Singapore, they could be the world champions already. 7 races left to go, so it's a big gap, right? And what about the other teams then? Well, Mercedes looks like it's going to be the second in the championship, no problems there. What else do we have then? We have the Aston Martin, we have Ferrari, and we have McLaren. McLaren still has the chance to try to catch Aston Martin, considering that McLaren has 2 drivers, Norris and Piastri, doing stuff, as we have seen in the last races. Ferrari has 2 drivers doing stuff, Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. And Aston Martin only has 1 driver, right? Alonso is the one who is doing the stuff. Lance Stroll looks like he's at the end of all this pack, like fighting for P9s, P10s right now. So I'm gonna guess that Ferrari or McLaren are gonna be finishing in the position 3, and we will see if Aston Martin, actually seeing the difference of almost 100 points with McLaren, can hold on to that after the 10 races and 2 sprint races at the end of the season, right? We will see what's gonna happen there. So, oh yeah, sorry. What about the other teams then? You have the Alpine, which is in P6, and looks like it's going to finish there. Like, they have the performance to try to be around the top 10, outperforming all the other 4 teams, but they do not have the speed to try to challenge perhaps the other cars. They might be able to challenge the Aston Martins perhaps in some races, but we will see if this is like this in other races. Like I said, evolutions are not going to be coming right now anymore, almost in any single car, so we will see how this is going to be handled. Then we have the Williams, the Haas, the Alfa Romeos, and the Alfa Tauris. Alfa Tauri should be the last car of the season. I don't see them scoring points. Perhaps if there is a big catastrophe on the race with a safety car or something, and they can take a big advantage of that. We will see if this is like this. All the accidents happen in front. We have seen this in many races already, so they could try to take advantage of that. But to do that, they need to beat the Alfa Romeos, they need to beat the Haas, and they need to beat the Williams. Williams should be scoring points in races like Monza, perhaps Singapore, and Las Vegas, right? Where you have big straight lines. They should be maybe scoring points with Alexander Albon. I don't think Logan Sargent has anything to bring to the table right now, compared with Alexander Albon, like I said. He's been out-qualified in every single race, that nothing went wrong for Albon. So yeah, we do have the Haas with Hülkenberg that has been doing really well in qualifying, but they do have the weakness of the tires. So maybe at the end of the season, with the temperatures dropping in some countries, they might have something else to bring to the table with the tire degradation. It's going to be difficult though. Scoring points is going to be difficult for any of these teams. It looks like Williams and Haas have something else over Alfa Romeo and Alfa Tauri. So looks like this is more or less going to be finishing like this. The only possibility is Williams and Haas changing positions. However, for Williams finishing 7th, seeing how they were last year, it's a really good result. What to keep an eye on for the rest of the season then? Well, we do have drivers that should be proving something else, right? Mainly starting with Sergio Perez, the biggest name, let's say, right? We know that Red Bull are looking somewhere else. They are not hiding it. They don't care about it. Red Bull is kind of like a trigger-easy team when firing people. They don't really care about contracts, as we have seen with Nick de Vries, for example, and many other drivers, right? When they demoted Gasly to the Alpha Tauri, when they did more or less the same thing with Alexander Albon, they don't care. With Daniel Kvyat and then on and on. We do have a lot of examples with the Red Bull team firing people in the middle of the season or for other season when the contracts were still in power. So the only thing that could help Sergio Perez would be, one, if he could be once again in his performance finishing 2nd, not so far from Max Verstappen. And 2, it's his contract. And his contract, I'm meaning the wage. His salary is not that low as all the other perhaps Red Bull drivers or AlphaTauri drivers that Red Bull has fired before. So firing him could actually cost Red Bull quite a big amount of money. So this could be the thing. Looks like he will be there for 2024. We will see what's going to happen with him for 2025. Everything points that he will not be staying in Red Bull anymore. Red Bull could go for either someone like Daniel Ricciardo or Nico Hülkenberg, or perhaps give the chance to Yuki Tsunoda or Daniel Ricciardo, or Nico Hülkenberg or Daniel Ricciardo or Yuki Tsunoda, or perhaps I don't know, if next year they put Liam Lawson in the Alpha Tauri and it does very well, he could be jumping there. They don't care if it's a Red Bull family driver, if they prefer because it's cheaper, but anyway. We will see what's happening there. Zhou Guanyu is another driver that should be proving something. He's being quite out-qualified in every single race by Valtteri Bottas, which is a driver that has way more experience than Zhou Guanyu. Theo Pourchaire is knocking at the door of Sauber, which is the young academy driver of Sauber, Theo Pourchaire, which is fighting for the title in F2, by the way. The thing good about Zhou Guanyu would be, number one, the team is happy with him. He's happy with the team. And Zhou Guanyu has 20 million in sponsorship, which Sauber might be needing for next year, considering that Alfa Romeo is leaving as a team name, title sponsor or whatever. And Audi is not coming until 2026. I don't think Audi will be covering the expenses of Sauber, perhaps some. But the 20 million of Zhou Guanyu are very, very attractive, which, by the way, we do have other teams also interested in him, like Haas and Williams. So he really needs to perform if he wants to stay in F1. We do have Yuki Tsunoda, which looks like it's going to be kind of safe due to the backup of Honda to Red Bull, right, to the Red Bull powertrains. Everything points that he will be staying there. His contract is finishing this season, but he's been out-qualifying Nick de Vries easily. He has been out-qualified a lot by Pierre Gasly before. And we will see what's going to happen with him and Ricciardo until the end of the season. If he can beat Daniel Ricciardo, it's going to be really good news for him and really bad news for Daniel Ricciardo. And if it's the other way around, then it's really good news for Daniel Ricciardo and very bad news for Yuki Tsunoda. We will see if perhaps 2025 he could jump to Red Bull. I don't know. I don't think so. Mainly because his main reason to stay in F1 is the Honda backing up. We do have Red Bull Young Academy drivers knocking at the door, like Liam Lawson, like I said, who's fighting for the championship in the Super Formula in Japan. Something that Pierre Gasly did before as well. So we will see what is going to happen with that. The other driver is Kevin Magnussen. did quite a good job last season coming back from nothing to F1, right? He out-qualified Mick Schumacher, even though at the end of the season, and this is my own observation, that Mick Schumacher was kind of closer and sometimes beating Kevin Magnussen in performance. This year, Nico Hülkenberg is beating the out of him. So what's going to happen with him? His contract is finishing this year. And like I said, Haas might be looking also somewhere else. The 20 million of Zhou Guanyu are very, very attractive for a team that, let's say, is not one of the richest, even though you have the cost cap. So yeah, they might be doing some changes. Otherwise, seeing that Alfa Romeo might be giving the title name to the team as well next year, Ferrari might have something to say about it there too. They do have Oliver Behrman, they do have Robert Schwartzman, they do have many academy drivers that they could try to put in the car. So we will see what's going to happen with Kevin Magnussen about that. So he really needs to start performing and try to get closer to Nico Hülkenberg if he wants to stay in F1, for example, for another year, right? Logan Sargent, like I said, he's being beaten left, right, and center by Alexander Albon. It's his rookie year, but still, seeing that the car is kind of capable of being in front of the second pack of the F1, right? And trying to challenge for points in more races than last year, for example, where they could only try to be there in high-speed races. In this season, looks like they can challenge in other racetracks as well. He should be trying to show some speed already. He was one of the young academy drivers for Williams. However, we will see what's going to happen there. Usually, rookies are given 1 or 2 seasons, unless you're Red Bull. On the other hand, they also might want Zhou Guanyu's money. Those 20 million are very, very interesting for a team like Williams, for example, where they are trying to update all the facilities and everything they have. They do not have the money for that, so 20 million could be very well placed there. Other drivers, seeing that other ways to try to find the money is the Mercedes engine, right? Right now, you have Frederic Vesti, which is a Mercedes Academy driver, fighting for the championship. If he is the champion, he will not be able to race in F2 next season. One option would be to go to Williams with a discount on the powertrains and everything from Mercedes, right? So Logan Sargent should be starting to be worried and trying to perform. Otherwise, he might be left out. I think he might not be in the grid next year. And the other one is Daniel Ricciardo. He is trying to go back to Red Bull. He has shown it and said and spoken and screamed about it in every single media that he can. Not any surprise there, right? I mean, everybody knows about this. So his performance will be under the telescope and under the microscope, if you can consider anything of those things. He must beat Yuki Tsunoda from here until the end of the season if he wants to be considered by Red Bull to be the substitute of Sergio Perez, right? Either for next season, either for 2025. We will see what's going to happen with him next year, if he will accept to stay in AlphaTauri or if Red Bull wants to put Liam Lawson in the second car of the AlphaTauri team. Or Hugo Boss team, or however that is going to be called. So yeah, he needs to perform. And again, Yuki Tsunoda, Daniel Ricciardo. If he does well, Tsunoda will have a bad problem for the future. If Tsunoda was well, his career in F1 is kind of over. So I think AlphaTauri right now is the worst team possible to be at, because both drivers are trying to go to Red Bull in the future, and their performance beating the other one will be the key on it. So another thing that we can see is the victories, right? Can Red Bull win everything? So far, they won sprint races, the main races, not the pole positions, but that is not counting, right? The only team that was the closest to do that was the McLaren in the year 88, if I am not mistaken, where McLaren won every single race except for one in Monza. And they didn't win because Ayrton Senna was taken out by a lapped car. So McLaren almost did the whole season challenge. Can Red Bull do it? Looks like probably yes. Considering that, like I said, they have won every single race so far. Verstappen won all of 10 races, and Sergio Perez won the other 2. So Looks like this is going to be one of the things. The question for next year, can anyone catch Red Bull, right? What do you think? My own guess is that they cannot. Why? Well, Red Bull is already focusing on next year's car, considering that they do have a penalty from wind tunnel and other stuff, CFD and stuff for this year. So they are already investing in the next year, seeing that they do have this gap with the second team right now, which is Mercedes, right? Or the McLaren. They do have an advantage with the DRS, and they do have an advantage with the chassis and everything. I mean, the car is really complete comparing with the other ones. All the other cars do have a weak point. Looks like the Red Bull doesn't. Can they close the gap? The good thing about next year and 2025 is that the rules will not be changing so much. When the rules are something that continue and nothing changes, you will see that actually the gaps start closing little by little, as is happening, right? Last year you had Ferrari and Red Bull. This year you do have Red Bull a little bit in front, but you do have Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, and perhaps in some races Aston Martin and Alpine fighting for those stuff. Like I said, Mercedes looks like it's right now the contender. You do have the Ferrari, who are trying to come back somehow to the main to the podium part where they were last year, right? You do have the McLaren, who had the awakening thanks to that Spec B. We will see if they do have an Spec C, or they will just focus on next year to try to improve even further. Right now, they are the second car on the grid in front of Mercedes even. So we will see about that. Looks like McLaren could be one of the contenders with Mercedes for next year's cars of Red Bull, right? And the Aston Martin, who looks like started the year well, but they are falling back. We don't know. Well, they said that they do have still money to develop this year's car, but why would you do that when you can develop next year's car, right? As everybody else is doing. So we will see what's going to happen with Aston Martin, and especially with Alpine, which do have a big structuring happening right now. Safnoyer was fired, Permain was fired. So it's a team that has a lot of interrogations. Will Andretti buy it? Is it going to continue being just Renault and do something else? We will see about that. So what do you think? Is there anything else you should keep an eye on? If you have, leave it in the comments, as per usual. I think we do have the race this weekend in Zandvoort, so we will see if anything happens in that racetrack where nothing really happens ever. Until then, have a nice time and see you.